The senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize. Madam President, without order, there can be no justice. We all know that. Without order, there can be no justice. This past year, we have seen felony rioting throughout the United States. It doesn't matter whether that felony rioting happened here at the Capitol. It doesn't matter whether it happened in Portland or Chicago or Atlanta or at any of our other wonderful communities throughout the United States. It is wrong, and we have all condemned it. And it should be punished, and it certainly shouldn't be rewarded. My amendment is very simple. It says that if you were one of those rioters and you have received due process, you have been convicted by a court of law of competent jurisdiction, and you have been adjudged to have committed a felony with respect to the riot or civil disorder in the past 2 years, that you cannot participate in the PPP program. We already have that law at the SBA for disaster loans. This would extend it to the PPP program. What you allow is what will continue. What you allow is what will continue. And that's why I would respectfully ask consideration of my amendment, Madam President.
Madam President.
The senator from Maryland.
I rise in opposition to the Kennedy Amendment. Let me be clear. Any amendment that's put on this clean extension will mean that the program will terminate in less than 1 week. And hundreds of thousands of small businesses will not be able to get their PPP loans. These are newly eligible. We changed the calculations on how much you can apply for. Those who have difficulty finding a financial institution to write the forgivable loan, those in hard-to-serve communities, all are going to be denied. And SBA has indicated there are hundreds of thousands of eligible applicants that have not been able to get in by the due date. Now, in regards to the Kennedy Amendment, the SBA COVID-19 relief is for existing businesses and current business owners with proven reentry track records. Anyone who has rebuilt their life after being incarcerated should be celebrated and supported. There's no reason why a business owned by someone with an unrelated criminal record should be treated any differently. I would urge my colleagues, for the sake of getting this bill to the President and signed so we can help our small businesses, to reject the Kennedy Amendment.
Madam President.
The senator from Louisiana.
How much time do I have left?
No time remaining.
Could I ask for consent for another 30 seconds?
Without objection.
Madam President, this is the third time I brought this amendment. The third time. Now, you either approve of the rioting that happened this summer and at the Capitol, or you don't. The riots this summer killed 47 people, well over $1 billion worth of damage. Number two, I can't help it if Speaker Pelosi has decided to go home, which prevents us from offering amendments to make this bill better. We all support extension of the PPP program, but this is not right. And it would be a lot more intellectually honest if my colleague said, who opposed my amendment, said, look, we just don't think that if you rioted, you should be punished with respect to the PPP program, because that's what a no vote is saying.
Fired.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent for 30 seconds to respond.
Without objection.
The gentleman's amendment goes well beyond that. The gentleman's amendment goes back 2 years. It could be a civil disturbance on a college campus if someone now has an existing business totally unrelated to any economic crime. It is just something that should not be in this law, and I urge my colleagues to reject it.
Madam President.
The senator from Louisiana.
I'd like to ask my colleague for 30 more seconds.
Is there objection? Without
Madam President, I
objection.
just want to read the language to you. It says that you're prohibited from getting a PPP loan if you've been convicted of a felony in relation to a riot or a civil disorder in the past 2 years. You either support violence or you don't. Madam President.
Senator from Louisiana.
I'd like to ask that my amendment, Kennedy Amendment number 1401, be called up, Madam President.
Clerk will report.
Madam President.
The senator from Oklahoma.
Madam President, there is a problem with the Paycheck Protection Program. Passed an overwhelming bipartisan support last December, but the implementation has been botched. Let me explain what I mean. If you're a small business owner, if you're an individual that is a sole proprietor or what's called a Schedule C, you had major issues in trying to be able to cover your employment last year, you would turn in and make a request for the Paycheck Protection Program. It was extended in December of last year for only the hardest hit businesses, those that had a 25% loss or more. Those businesses could not survive into the next year. So we extended it out and allowed them to be able to get additional time and an additional couple of months of payroll to be able to make sure they make it. Now, for these extremely small businesses, these sole proprietors, these individuals that are out there, this means just them, or sometimes them and one other person that they're actually covering the expenses for. These are not our mega businesses. These are our backbone smallest businesses. This is the truck driver in Oklahoma. This is the piano teacher in Oklahoma. These are folks that are actually trying to be able to make a living the best way they know how. When it was passed in December, the Small Business Administration interpreted that rule to say you could only use your net expenses for that, your net expenses. Then, in March, Small Business Administration reinterpreted that and said, no, you could use your gross expenses on that. Now, for a lot of folks, they would say, what's the difference on that? Well, the difference is usually about $5,000 or $10,000. That's an enormous difference. And for some folks in this room, $5,000 or $10,000 may not be very much, but it's a lot for that truck driver and that piano teacher. So the logical thing for Small Business Administration to do would be to say, okay, we changed the rule in March from what it was earlier, so let's make it retroactive that folks that applied early, the most desperate folks, could actually still get the difference. But that's not what happened. Small Business Administration said, no, if you received the loan earlier, you received a smaller amount. If you waited and applied later, you'd get the larger amount. Exact same type of business, exact same situation, but basically Small Business Administration said, this is too complicated to go back and redo this, and so we'll just allow folks that applied early, the most desperate, to get the least, and folks that applied later to get more. We're bringing an amendment that would just fix that and would allow the folks that applied early, the most desperate folks, to be able to get the help, to be able to get the same level of help as the folks that applied later. So, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that it be in order for me to offer my amendment 1402.
Is there an objection?
Reserving the right to object.
The senator from Maryland.
I don't know whether does the gentleman from Kansas want to be heard first? Madam President, first let me thank the senator from Oklahoma for bringing this to the floor. Here's our challenge. If it gets onto the bill that we have before us, it will delay the continuation of the Paycheck Protection Program because it terminates on March 31st. We're not going to have any program to modify. And the House is not in session until the second week in April. So it's not possible to get this done before the program expires. So for that reason, we have to oppose any amendment on the underlining bill, which is a clean extension of the PPP. But I want to thank my friend from Oklahoma for bringing this forward, because I agree with you. As chairman of the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, I support making the changes that the administration made in regards to the determination for self-employed retroactive. I think that's a fair thing to do. I also support making sure that the business structure that is chosen by the small business also qualifies, whether it be a partnership or a traditional business arrangement. I think we need to make those changes, and I know our staffs are working on the exact language. There is some challenge on how we draft the language, and you have my commitment that we will work during this recess, and I assure you that I want to see this done, and I hope we can do it by UC when we return, when the House is in session, and get this done as quickly as possible. The point you raised is very valid, but let me go back to the original bill for the self-employed that used, as you said, a formula that didn't work. In some cases, it was $50 or $80 that they got on the PPP, which was ridiculous because a self-employed person doesn't have the same payroll expenses that a traditional small business has. And we based the PPP calculations on the payroll amount. That didn't apply to the self-employed. So that's why the gross receipts are the right way to make those calculations. And that's what we want to do. That's what this administration did in its recalculation, but it made it prospective only. It needs to be retroactive. So I agree with the gentleman, but I cannot consent to agree to it today, and it's not going to delay the Senate consideration of it because the House is not in session for the next 2 weeks. So the first time we can really get this done is the second week in April. And you have my commitment that we will work together to get the provision made retroactive and to cover the legal structures that are used by some of our small businesses that are not currently covered under the current interpretation. But I think this is a legal issue that we have to resolve. For all those reasons, Madam President, I do object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Madam President, I do want to thank my friend from Maryland. This is an important issue. It does need to be resolved. It's not had enough attention on this, as he and I have talked about it over the last several days, and several others have joined in. This deals with partnerships, whether it be ag. This deals with individuals. And so my friend from Kansas, he and I have worked together on this to be able to combine a piece of legislation to make sure we're dealing with all types of businesses that would be affected. And I do hope to be able to get this through on unanimous consent in the days ahead to be able to get this resolved as quickly as possible, as well as continue to be able to reach out to Small Business Administration and to see what they can do to be able to communicate with those folks.